A Boolean data type is used to represent true and false kind of values. There are only two possible values of this type, true or false. Let's declare a variable x and assign a value of false to it. Notice that we are not putting false in double quotes or single quotes, otherwise that will become a string. We just write true or false, which are the only two Boolean literals. Alright? Let's check the type of this variable. And of course, it's a Boolean type. Now, one thing to note about Boolean values is that JavaScript also treats some other values as falsy values. And these values are undefined, null, 0, both plus and minus zeros, nan, which stands for not a number in floating point system, and the empty string. All these values are treated as false by JavaScript under certain conditions. So let's see when are they treated as false. We have already declared this variable x. Now let's declare another variable y and let it be undefined. So if we compare the two variables by using the double equals operator, we get a false. So these two values are not equal. But I said that JavaScript treats undefined as falsy value. So why aren't they equal? Well, undefined is not really false, okay? It's basically its own type, which is undefined itself. But if we were to use it in a conditional, it will be treated as false by JavaScript. Let me write a little function. Don't worry about the syntax right now. We will get to functions and conditionals a little later. Just see what's going on within this function. Let me name it as check falsy and pass it a parameter z. Now we need to type on the next line. So let's hit enter and we get an error because the JavaScript interpreter tries to evaluate the expression that we just typed in, which is not complete yet. So to go to the next line, press shift and enter. Okay, and now we check if z, then console.log, truthy value passed, else console.log, falsy value passed. Alright. So what we are doing is checking if the value passed to this function is true, or rather I should say truthy. Then the function logs truthy on the console. Otherwise, if JavaScript treats this variable as holding a false value, it logs falsy on the console. Alright. Again, make sure that when you want to type a multi-line function on the console, just use shift plus enter to go to the next line. This tells the JavaScript environment that the input is not yet complete for evaluation. JavaScript does the evaluation when we press enter on the console. For a web page, we write JavaScript code inside a .js file or embed the code in an HTML page itself. But we are using the console here just to learn the basic syntax and rules of the language. Now let's use this check falsy function and pass some values and see how JavaScript treats them. Let me declare a variable, name it val, and don't initialize it. So its value right now is undefined. Alright. So let's pass this variable as argument to the check falsy function. And as you can see, the function prints falsy value on the console screen. As said earlier, undefined is treated as a falsy value. Similarly, you may experiment with it, passing a few different values to this function and see how JavaScript treats them. And this kind of thing may be a source of bug in case you want to do some comparison based on real Boolean values rather than JavaScript treating something as truthy or falsy value. That's why it's important to understand this, so that you can handle it appropriately if needed.